All right, everyone, welcome back to Tech Talk Tuesday. We didn't have a Tech Talk Tuesday last week because I did a private webinar um, for the Meriden school system here in Connecticut on artificial intelligence. That was a lot of fun. Had a lot of people show up, so it was cool. So this week we're talking about embracing zero trust security for small businesses. As a note, we will be talking about holiday scams next week as the holiday season approaches. Actually, Thanksgiving is next week because I record this. So the scammers of the world are ramping up already. You'll see an influx of phishing emails around holiday specials and Black Friday and Cyber Monday and things like that. But we're going to talk about zero trust, and with the holiday season approaching, it's perfect time to talk about zero trust because zero trust will help prevent a lot of the problems that you'll see with those holiday scams. As an example, if you click on a link in an email that downloads a script to run on your computer, zero trust will block that. If it's enabled on your computer and it's set up properly, it will get blocked. And the only way to access it would be to request permission, and at which point somebody will then investigate and see what's going on. And I have some scenarios that I'll share with you as we get further into this presentation, but let's just get into it. So I am Scott Gummer, owner of Nuage Tech, Proactive IT. Along with that, I am also a member of the 405D task force. It's a federal task force for improving cybersecurity in the healthcare world on all levels. And we'll get to that in a little bit too, about the smaller businesses being a target. And I'm also a member of the NIST privacy work group. Among other things, I'm also a member of the New Haven County Bar Association and the chair of the Cybersecurity Tech Committee. I'm a member of the Mid-State Chamber of Commerce. I sit on the board, and I'm also a member of the Education and Tech Committee there. So let's start with what is zero trust. People hear zero trust, and the word pretty much, or the two words together, pretty much explain what it is. But imagine your business as a fortress. Traditionally, security focuses on building high walls around this fortress to keep intruders out. Once someone is inside those walls, though, an employee or a trusted partner, they're generally trusted. But what if an intruder manages to get in? Or what if someone inside turns out to be untrustworthy? And I have a stat to share with you shortly that you're not going to like. Zero trust is a modern approach to cybersecurity that operates on a simple but fundamental principle: trust no one by default, even those all already on your network. It's like having a security guard at every door inside your fortress, checking IDs and granting access only when necessary. I equate this to, I stopped at the gas station yesterday to grab a water, and the guy in front of me was buying cigarettes. The guy was clearly an elder gentleman, at least in his 60s, maybe older than that, and they carded him for cigarettes, and he was kind of flabbergasted by this. Not sure why, because it's been a law for a while now, but by law, they have to card everyone for cigarettes. Doesn't matter how old you look, they have to card everyone for cigarettes now. And the reason for that is they don't trust anybody. That's what zero trust is. We don't trust anybody. It kind of sucks in a sense, but that's what it is. For cybersecurity purposes, we trust no one. For your business, this means verifying everyone, whether it's an employee, a customer, or a vendor. Everyone's identity is verified before they can access any of your business's digital resources. It means least privilege access. People only get access to the information they absolutely need to do their job, nothing more. This minimizes the risk if their credentials are compromised. Continuous monitoring. The system continuously checks for suspicious activities, and we do this, all of this. If someone normally accesses your system from Connecticut and suddenly logs in from another country, the system will flag this. And finally, implementing zero trust doesn't mean you distrust your employees or partners. It's about protecting your business from external and internal threats in a world where cyber threats are increasingly sophisticated and common. It's an acknowledgement that breaches can happen, and if they do, you're prepared to minimize the damage. So again, as the example, if I get a holiday themed phishing email. Let's say I get an email from, I'll use air quotes, Amazon, and I click on a link to open the 50% off whatever item it is, and it goes to download a script to my computer, and it downloads the script unbeknownst to me, the user, and then the script is set to run on its own. So now it's running on your computer, and that script now gives an attacker somewhere access to your computer. Well, you don't want that. That would be really bad, and zero trust would prevent that from occurring. So some stats here. So 43% general adoption rate as of November 14, 2023, approximately 43% of surveyed professionals stated that their companies have already adopted zero trust solution. Now, that's pretty vague because there are different zero trust solutions. Multi-factor authentication on your email is considered zero trust. There are different areas of zero trust, so we focus on all of these, but that 43% could mean that's 43% of those surveyed have multi-factor authentication, not necessarily zero trust on all the devices that don't allow things to run without somebody checking whether or not it's legitimate. And also this factors in enterprise businesses, which are more likely to implement these types of things. 10%. Gartner predicts that by 2026, 10% of large enterprises will have a mature and measurable zero trust program in place. This forecast highlights the gradual but significant adoption of zero trust among larger corporations, indicating its growing importance in the enterprise security landscape. Zero trust reduces the cost of data breach by about $1 million. So if you have zero trust implemented across the board, you reduce your cost of your data breach by about $1 million. And I'll explain why as we go along here. Adding layered security, which zero trust is a part of. So work from anywhere models are truly secure was named the #1 priority for IT professionals at SMEs in both 2021 and 2022. So the single most important item, layered security. So as an example, in the Watch Tech, we have endpoint detection and response. We have a NOC that's constantly monitoring. We have zero trust implemented. We have a number of other items implemented that monitor constantly, alert, and or are addressed instantly. So I'll get to a real world scenario shortly. 43% reduction in data breach costs for organizations with fully deployed zero trust architecture. There's a 43% reduction in data breach costs. This substantial decrease highlights the effectiveness of zero trust in reducing the overall impact of security incidents. Internal actors account for about 44% of data breaches in small businesses. So that could be intentional or non-intentional. So an internal actor could be a disgruntled employee. That's the obvious one. But it could be a happy-go-lucky employee that accidentally clicks on something. It could be somebody who got into your network by physically accessing your building. So these are all internal actors. Could be a vendor. A vendor often is a way in for some of these cyber attacks. So how does zero trust differ from traditional security? Kind of have a little image here. Zero trust and traditional security models differ fundamentally in their approach to cybersecurity. Here's a contrast between the two. Number one, the trust philosophy. Zero trust operates under the assumption that threats can exist both outside and inside the network. It follows the principle of never trust, always verify. Zero trust implements strict access controls and continuous verification. Access to resources is granted on a need-to-know basis using least privilege access principles. And we're going to get into all these principles later. Whereas traditional security models, typically those rely on the concept of a trusted internal network and an untrusted external network. Once inside the network perimeter, for example, past the firewall, users and devices are generally trusted. And traditional security models often provide broader network access once authentication is completed. This can lead to more extensive access than necessary for a particular user or device. So in the first scenario, where once they're in the network, they're free to roam about. As an example, your antivirus programs of the past, Symantec, Norton antivirus, and McAfee, those types of antiviruses, that definition files. And so if you had updated definition files, in theory, you were able to defend against all known attacks, malware attacks. The problem is you probably don't update all the time. And even if you do, they create malware faster than they create the definition files, because you can't create a definition file for something if you don't know it exists. And then in its second example, I don't know the word I'm trying to look for here. Access to the entire network without any boundaries. We'll use that word, boundaries. Is extremely dangerous, because if somebody does get in, they're going to have access to everything, and they will move laterally, and they will do this very quickly. Zero trust. The security perimeter is a dynamic and defined by location of the data and resources, not by the physical or network boundaries. And this is great for remote working, work from home type scenarios. For traditional security models, the security perimeter is typically defined by the physical location of the organization's network. For user authentication, zero trust requires strong and continuous authentication and verification processes. That's why you sometimes get logged out of your, if you're in Microsoft, you'll get logged out after not using it for a little while. If you're on your computer, you'll get logged out after not using it for a little while. That's zero trust. Often employing multi-factor authentication and context-aware access controls. And those access controls could be, are you at this location? And if you're not there, then why are you trying to access your email or whatever it is? Whereas traditional security models, authentication is often only required at the entry point of the network. Once inside, users have as much free access as they want. For network segmentation, zero trust utilizes microsegmentation to isolate implications and services from each other, which limits lateral movement of attackers within the network, whereas traditional security models generally employ less granular segmentation, which can leave internal resources vulnerable once a breach occurs. For zero trust, assumption of breach operates under the assumption that a breach can be or has occurred, thus emphasizing continuous monitoring and rapid response. Traditional security models often operate under the assumption that the perimeter defense will prevent breaches and less focus on internal threats. And then finally, adaptability and scalability. Zero trust is highly adaptable to the cloud and remote working environments, as it doesn't rely on a defined physical perimeter, whereas traditional security models can struggle with the security challenges posed by a cloud service and remote work. These are just some of the reasons why zero trust differs from traditional security. The key principle for zero trust: never trust, always verify. Okay. This fundamentally shifts how security is approached in an organization. Let's break down what this principle entails and its implications. Never trust, inherent distrust. In zero trust model, inherent distrust is applied to every user, device, and network, regardless of whether they are within or outside of the organization's network boundaries. And I'm talking C-level all the way down the food chain in an organization. It doesn't matter who you are. There's a zero trust model. Somebody has to approve whatever it is. Somebody or something needs to approve it. And then you always verify. Continuous authentication. Every access request to the organization's resources is authenticated and authorized. So there's two different things. You authenticate, meaning you put in your credentials. Hopefully that includes multi-factor authentication, but then you're also authorized, meaning somebody said, yes, you have permission to view this information, these files, whatever it might be. Least privilege access. Again, access rights are strictly limited to what is necessary for users to perform their job functions. So if I am in the marketing team, I should not have access to HR records or bank accounts or financial records or anything like that. Probably not even to client information as a marketer. And if I'm in the HR team, I shouldn't have access to financial information of the clients that come into my business. So you get access for what you need, and only that and nothing else. Enhanced security posture. By not automatically trusting anyone, even those within the network perimeter, zero trust significantly reduces the attack surface and limits the potential damage from breaches. Dynamic trust levels. Trust levels are not static and can change rights when connecting from the office versus a public Wi-Fi. So in other words, if I'm in the office, I have a certain level of security granted to me because I'm in the office. So I'm at a specific IP address in this case. It assumes that my email is secure, and maybe assume isn't the best word, but we've already authorized that IP address within the email system as an example. But if I go to public Wi-Fi, that's not authorized. That's blocked automatically because we have set up conditional access to not allow access outside of our office network. And adaptability to modern work environment. Zero trust is particularly effective in today's digital and cloud-centric work, not Word, because there is a cloud version of Word, work environments where users access systems remotely and network perimeters are no longer clearly defined. So we always work from home, not always, but a lot of us work from home, for various reasons, whether it's weather, family, whatever it could be. So if we work from home, then maybe your IP address, your home IP address is added as a conditional access location. But if it hasn't, then maybe you can't get into email. But it is more of a scenario that we face today where people are working from home, people are working remote, people are working. I have a client who's got an employee that's traveling South America right now. So they work from wherever they are in South America. And initially we had blocked logins outside the United States. And then the first time they tried to log in outside the United States, we got an alert and we addressed it. And that's when I discovered they were traveling. Better data protection and compliance. We love that word, right? Compliance with comprehensive monitoring and strict access controls. Zero trust helps in better protecting sensitive data, then thus aiding in compliance with various data protection regulations. And implementing a zero trust architecture can be complex and may require substantial investment in technology and training. Now, investment in technology and training. So there's training involved, of course. Who do we submit the request to, or how do we manage this type of zero trust policy, or so forth? How do the end users deal with this? Unique cybersecurity challenges faced by small businesses. So I said earlier that small businesses are being targeted. I believe I have it on another slide, but are being targeted at a much higher rate now. So I hear from small business owners all the time, all the way down to the single owner operator business, that they are not a target of cybersecurity. Nobody's interested in their business. This is 1000% not accurate. Small businesses are targeted daily and constantly for various reasons, but primarily because they can also be used to target larger businesses. So to gain access to the email account of momandpopshop.com, then we can now email our vendors from that account, and the vendors may not be aware that the account is compromised. And now you're sending malicious links and malicious files to larger businesses. That's one reason. Another reason is mom and pop shop might have, $25,000, $50,000 that they can pay, or they have cyber liability insurance that they can pay for the ransom demand, various things, or their credit could be stolen, their identity could be stolen. Zero trust operates under the assumption that threats can exist both outside and inside the network. So your employees, you hire the kid to run the cash register. We don't know what he's doing on the cash register. If it's a POS that connects to the internet, maybe he's doing something he's not supposed to be doing. Zero trust implements strict access controls and continuous verification. Zero trust says the security perimeter is dynamic and defined by the location of the data and resources, not by the physical or network boundaries. Zero trust requires strong continuous authentication and verification processes. Zero trust utilizes microsegmentation to isolate applications and services from each other, which limits lateral movement and attackers within the network. As an example, just to give you one you might be familiar with, if you have a network where you have data and you have computers that access this data, but then you also have smart thermostats. You segment the smart thermostats, you give them their own virtual network so that they are not connected to the same network as your data and your computers that access that data, because smart thermostats may not get patched regularly, meaning their software might not get updated and they might have vulnerabilities. And that could be a way for attackers to get in. So that's an example of network segmentation, and zero trust segments software so that it cannot interact with each other and decreases the chance that someone who does gain access can move laterally through your network through those software applications. So here's what I was talking about. Increasing cyber security threats targeting small enterprises. Small businesses are 3 times more likely to be targeted by cyber criminals than larger companies, and total cost of cyber crimes to small businesses reached $2.4 billion in 2021. This is according to the U.S. CISA, so you can trust this information. It's coming from the United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Try to say that 5 times fast. So what we're saying here is that small businesses are being targeted at a much higher clip than larger businesses. And one of those reasons is it is traditionally easier to get into the network of a smaller business. They're usually not as secure. They don't have the resources that a lot of enterprise businesses have to keep the intruders out. But also because it can be used, again, it can be used to target the larger businesses. Benefits of a zero trust model for smaller scale operations. Well, implementing a zero trust model can offer numerous benefits for smaller scale operations, including small and medium-sized businesses. Here are some of the key advantages. Enhanced security against breaches. Zero trust significantly reduces the attack surface by requiring verification at every step, making it more difficult for attackers to exploit internal network vulnerabilities. So I can't just connect to a computer and then connect to the file share and then connect to the bank accounts and to the accounting software and to the client data, and to it's all requires authentication again and again and again. So if I don't have that authentication and I only got onto that device because of some vulnerability I exploited, I'm not going to be able to move laterally. Cost-effective security solution. Zero trust does not cost a lot to implement. In fact, we have managed to keep our prices around average for a managed service provider when we include zero trust. Improve compliance and data protection, which again, at this point, especially if you're in Connecticut and next year starting Florida, you have data protection laws in place. So Connecticut has the Connecticut DPA, Florida has the FDPR, I think it's going to be called, starting in June or July of 2024. And then if you're in healthcare, you have HIPAA. If you're in financial, you have to worry about the FTC and various other, if you're in a school system, you have to worry about FERPA, various other compliance laws that are out there. California has the CCPA, Europe has the GDPR. So lots of compliance laws out there. We talked about these a couple of weeks ago, but you need to adhere to these compliance laws. They govern how you run your business to some degree. Flexibility and scalability. Zero trust architecture is highly adaptable to changing business needs. Literally takes me minutes to update it for clients. Supports remote and hybrid work models. And let's face it, it's since COVID, thank you COVID, the remote work is more prevalent than ever, and it's not going to go away. Reduces insider threat risk. This is a growing risk. Every year the insider threat numbers increase, and it continues to increase. By applying strict access controls and continuous monitoring, zero trust helps in mitigating risks associated with insider threats. Simplified IT management. With a zero trust framework, IT management can become more straightforward due to its uniform application of security policies across all users and devices. Builds customer trust by adopting a zero trust model. Small business can demonstrate their commitment to security, potentially increasing trust among customers and partners. You know, I saw a stat the other day, said 94% of everybody that was surveyed said they would never go back to an auto dealership if they suffered a cybersecurity breach. Almost 100%. 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 would not return to that dealership. Rapid response to threats. I'm going to give you a case in a little while that we had here. Better visibility and control. You can see what's going on. And for small businesses, implementing a zero trust model can be a strategic move to bolster cybersecurity defenses while accommodating growth in modern practices, modern work practices. Core elements of zero trust. So these are the core elements. We're going to go into each one individually. So identity verification and management, device authentication and security, least privilege access control, network segmentation and microsegmentation, and continuous monitoring and real-time security. These are the core elements of zero trust. So the first we've talked about quite a bit on the Tech Talk Tuesdays already. We're going to get into that right now. Oh, I just told you that. Identity verification. So we have importance of strong identity verification measures, role of multi-factor authentication. Again, we've talked ad nauseum about it, and I do it a lot because it is extremely important that it's set up. And there's still a significant number of businesses that are not utilizing MFA across the board. And identity management solutions suitable for small businesses. So device security is an integral component of modern cybersecurity strategies, encompasses various practices and solutions to protect both business and personal devices. Here's an overview of focusing on ensuring device security, endpoint security solutions, and the importance of regular. I'm sorry, that's not identity verification. All right, so identity verification, importance of strong identity verification measures. So Microsoft is rolling out into more Microsoft is rolling out, and others are starting to roll this out, identity verification measures where it's not just a password anymore. So now, and multi-factor authentication is changing because some of the methods of multi-factor authentication attackers have figured out how to circumvent them. So for example, when I send a multi-factor authentication via text message, attackers have learned how to circumvent that. In other words, they will take the end user that is requesting that authentication, pretend to be Microsoft, and try to get that authentication from them. And I've seen it work. I've seen it where the end user was trying to gain access to their account, thought they were speaking with Microsoft directly via text message. They get their multi-factor authentication in text message for the Microsoft account, and then get a text message from the person claiming to be Microsoft saying, we just sent you a code. Can you please tell us the code so we can verify you? And they send the code. In reality, it was the attackers who were trying to gain access to the Microsoft account. So now they've got access to the Microsoft account. Now they could do whatever they need to do. So Microsoft is trying to move away from this. It's not to say it can't be used. It still can be used. But however, they would prefer you use an app on your phone. So Microsoft has an authentication app, but there are others out there. You can use a YubiKey, which is what I do. So you need a physical key plugged into a USB drive on your computer, and you need to be there with that key in order to have it work. now Microsoft will alert you on your phone and ask you to verify using a number that's also on your screen. So that's some of the verification measures that are rolling out little by little. And so once it becomes more prevalent to everybody else, then it will be rolled out to other platforms too. And I'm sure some of them have already started to do this. The role of multi-factor authentication. So we kind of talked about that. So why is it so important? Because it is a second form of authentication on top of your password. In most cases, you need that form of authentication. And you'll notice if you use Microsoft at all, when you go from one part of the Microsoft ecosystem to another, it asks you to log in again. And that is what we talked about earlier. It's trying to prevent lateral movement. And identity management solutions suitable for small businesses. There are a number of identity management solutions out there, including password managers, including multi-factor authentication apps or physical keys. All of these things all play a role in identity management for your business and for your personal, really. You should be using these for your bank accounts and things like that too. Device security. So device security, ensuring the security of business and personal devices, regular device audits and compliance, and endpoint security solutions. So the personal devices, it really falls on the shoulders of the personal device owner, but the business devices, the business should be taking care of these. Okay, so that means making sure that Zero Trust is installed and that your other security softwares are installed on the device. It means being able to track where that device is. It means encrypting the data on the device, and these are some of the methods and some of the items that need to be addressed to make sure the device is secure. As a business owner, you don't have a lot of control over personal devices. So if you have a bring your own device, a BYOD policy, you operate at your own risk. Now you can say that personal device cannot connect to my network without having certain security measures installed, and that would be okay. Regular device audits and compliance. We are constantly auditing devices to make sure they are meeting compliance needs, and to make sure that everything's up to date. So all the software is up to date and all the operating system info is up to date. There are patches all the time, so making sure Google Chrome has a patch, seems like once or twice a week lately, so you have to update. And endpoint security solutions, there are numerous endpoint security solutions out there. We have a stack that we have been very happy with here at Noage Tech, and the stack prevents various things from occurring, and some of those things include and sometimes it gets it wrong too. So let's be fair, sometimes it gets it wrong, but most of the time it's right, and it's prevented a large ransomware attack already once that I'm aware of, and it may have done it more than once because it may not even gotten in. The days of, I'm going to say this, I say this a lot to people, but I'm going to say this again, Norton 360 and McAfee are over. Those do not cut it anymore. The Avast and the AVG of the world, they don't cut it anymore. It isn't working anymore. Access controls, implementing least privilege access. So what does that mean? Principle of least privilege, or POLP, P-O-L-P, you might see it referred to as that way, grant users and systems the minimum levels of access or permissions necessary to perform their job functions. Access restrictions, implement strict access controls to prevent unnecessary or excessive access to sensitive systems and data, reducing the risk of internal and external breaches. Dynamic access controls adjust access rates in real time based on the context of the access request, user behavior, and current threat landscape. So for our Zero Trust, occasionally, none of our clients have admin access to their computers, with the few exceptions. So when they try to install something, they are alerted that they can request admin access. So depending on what it is they're trying to do, we can either deny or grant them admin access. And this is what dynamic access controls means. So now once they've got access control, admin control to install that application, they can install the application, and that's it. They don't have access to do anything else. So even the admin access that was granted to them to install that application will not grant them the ability to do anything else. And that's what dynamic access controls means. That's the simple version. It gets more detailed than that. Ensuring secure access to resources. So ensuring that you have remote access security. In other words, you're not using remote desktop protocol over port 3389 and not using a VPN to connect to an external resource that's available to the entire world. That would be ensuring secure access to resources. And then when you do access that resource, making sure you're using the same level of authentication and authorization that you do internally. So if I'm connecting back to a server, I shouldn't have access to the financial records of clients if I am an HR employee, even if I'm connecting externally. Network segmentation, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Again, I'll use the example of the smart thermostat. If I have a smart thermostat on my business, I don't want that on the same network as my computers and the data that the computers access. I want them on a separate network. If I have VoIP phones, same thing, because these types of devices don't get updated as frequently as my computers and my servers do, where the actual data, the sensitive data is. So we segment those devices. We keep them off of this network where the computers and the data are. And then this way, if somebody does manage to compromise my smart thermostat, all they're going to have access to is a smart thermostat. They'll change the temperature. Maybe they'll freeze me out or melt me, but they won't be able to get to anything else on the network. And so that's the idea of network segmentation. And honestly, it's not hard to do. So if you have a small business and you're being told that it's very complex setup, it's really not. You just have to have the right hardware. Benefits for small business on isolating critical assets. I kind of touched on that just now. If you have devices that may or may not get updated on a routine basis, you'll want to keep those segmented. Really, you should have your network with your data and the devices that access the data separate from everything else. And that includes VoIP phones, that includes smart thermostats, printers. Printers are another device that don't get updated as frequently as they should. Those printers should have the default passwords changed. We've talked about that in the past. They should be, everything default on them should be changed. And you should have simple strategies for effective segmentation. Again, it's not a complex, it's not difficult to set up. And as a matter of fact, the Zero Trust platform that we use now allows us even more network control within the environment. Excuse me. I am still trying to shake something. So monitoring and analytics, ensuring the security of business and personal devices. You do this by continuously monitoring. And so what does that mean? Well, I'll use the example I used earlier. We have a client who has an employee that's going to be traveling South America for the next few months. And we monitor for unusual logins. And they logged in from a country in South America. We were alerted. The account was automatically locked. And we addressed it quickly. It turned out it was legitimate. They were actually traveling, and we unlocked the account and they got back in, which is great. Initially we would thought maybe, okay, this employee's account was compromised and somebody in South America is accessing it. It turned out to be that was not the case. We didn't prevent anything, but I will say this, the client feels better knowing that we're on top of these things. So we monitor for these things. We monitor for excessive logins. We monitor for password changes, forwarding emails. All of these things are monitored because this is all part of Zero Trust. We turn off, most of our clients don't even have forwarding as an option on their email. It's turned off. It's disabled. I shouldn't say turned off. It's disabled. So it cannot be turned on. Regular device audits and compliance. Again, checking the devices for all of those things I just mentioned, but also making sure that everything's up to date and that you are complying with whatever governance rules you might have to comply with. And at bare minimum, I would think almost every business in the US has to deal with PCI, which is credit card. If you accept credit cards or you pay electronic payments of some type, you have PCI rules that you need to comply with. So that's bare minimum. A lot of states now are either implementing or getting ready to implement data protection laws. Connecticut has some of the strictest in the country already. California, Colorado, or some of the other ones. Florida will in a year, less than a year now, about 9 months. So most states are getting there. And endpoint security solutions, again, we talked about this, the endpoint security solutions that you have should be alerting you and should be providing analytics. We have platforms that tell us every malicious site that a computer tried to connect to. We have platforms that tell us every malicious file that was downloaded, everything that was attempted on that computer. And yes, it's a lot of data. So we filter it out by things that might be relevant to look up, right? So if let's say they downloaded an Excel document that had macros running, we would get an alert, and we would say, okay, this isn't normal for this person. Let's go check it out, and maybe we have to isolate that machine right away. Implementing zero trust in a small business. So step-by-step approach for small businesses. Some of the things are going to be easy. Again, setting up multi-factor authentication is really not that hard. It could be a little cumbersome based on the size of your business. So if you have several hundred employees or more, it might take a little bit longer to get off the ground. We just did this for a business with somewhere between 30 and 40 employees. And we had a couple of hiccups. We had a couple of users that ignored the warning that said that you had 2 weeks to set this up. And 2 weeks came, they were locked out. Okay, so we have to deal with it. That's part of the step-by-step approach, but begin by identifying what data, applications, and systems are critical and need protection. And I would almost venture to say everything should be on that list, because you might think, oh, well, my Facebook account, not important. Who cares? Well, what happens if your Facebook account gets compromised and they start messaging people from your business? They don't know it's you, not you. Now you could have a data problem. This includes customer data, financial information, intellectual property, etc. Map the flow of data. Where does the data go? Where does it start? Where does it go? Understand how data moves within your network. And this is something else we do. We do monitor this. Determine who accesses that data, when and from where, to identify potential vulnerabilities. We even get alerts every time a client, and very few of our clients, so hundreds of endpoints, hundreds of users, and there's definitely under 10, maybe under 5 employees total that have remote access to a network. And I'm alerted, I am personally alerted every time somebody connects remotely to the network. So I know when, Mr. Smith at financialservicesbusiness.com tries to access a network, I get an alert. So I know if it's him or not, because I can look at the IP where they're coming from, and I can determine if it's a legitimate request or did his account get compromised. So first of all, multi-factor authentication needs to get set up. Apply role-based access controls, also known as RBAC, RBAC, to ensure users have access only to the resources necessary for their job functions. So role-based meaning, if I'm in HR, again, I'll keep using the HR example, I shouldn't have access to client financial data. I shouldn't have access to marketing data. I shouldn't have access to anything outside of my role, whatever is required by HR. Use VLANs. That was what we're talking about for network segmentation. So keep your smart thermostats off of the network that the computers and data are on. Protect devices accessing your network with endpoint security solutions that include antivirus, anti-malware, and EDR capabilities. and EDR is endpoint detection and response, meaning it sees the problem and responds to it immediately. Implement monitoring tools to track network activities and detect anomalies. Network anomalies are important because if you normally have, I don't know, 2 gigs of traffic a day, and suddenly you're at 22 gigs a day, something's wrong. Keep all system software and applications updated and the latest security patches. Create and enforce security policies. Develop clear security policies and procedures and ensure they are communicated and enforced. Remember, we talked about incident response plan 2 weeks ago. So that's part of that. Oh, matter of fact, next one, incident response plan. So we talked about the 2 weeks ago. So I'm not sure if I uploaded that yet, but I will make sure it is. Have a plan in place to how to respond to security incidents. That's what an incident response plan does. Utilize cloud-based services. Cloud services often offer scalable and cost-effective solutions for identity management, endpoint protection, and network security, and also compliance. There are tools out there that will help you identify compliance issues on your devices. Open source tools. Consider open source options for monitoring intrusion detection and vulnerability scanning. Outsource when necessary. I have a client of mine actually is a marketing company, and their pitch is always fire yourself from the marketing, meaning you shouldn't be handling the marketing. Well, it's the same for IT. You shouldn't be handling your IT. This is a full-time job. I'm working daily from about 7 a.m. My first phone call this morning was before 7:30 a.m. and I'm usually working until 11 o'clock at night. Yes, I take breaks, I walk around, I exercise, whatever, whatever to break the monotony, but I'm always moving with this job. So if you're running a business, you shouldn't be doing that too. Regular security audits. Running an audit on your devices, on your people, everything. All of it needs to be done routinely at least once a year, but more often than that. Regular training sessions. Ask my clients if I send trainings. We do all the time. So at least once a week for most clients, and they're not long micro trainings, but they also have an annual training, so they're better prepared for the inevitable, because a cyber attack is inevitable. It's going to happen, and it could be a phishing email, it could be a data breach, it could be anything. It's how you respond, and can we prevent it from doing any damage? Create a security conscious culture. This is key, and we will do a webinar on that in the future. Foster a culture where security is everyone's responsibility. Encourage employees to report suspicious activity. Utilize online resources. There are lots and lots of resources, including this video. But there are websites I go to all the time to read the latest and greatest. There are lots of training videos on YouTube that you can watch for free. Lots of things out there you can do. And simulate security scenarios. So one that we do quite a bit of is phishing simulations, but you could do others too. Test your employees sometimes. See if they allow somebody to piggyback into the building. So if they hold the door open for the UPS guy because he's got a brown uniform on and he's carrying a bunch of boxes, especially this time of the year, holiday season, they failed. They've allowed an intruder in. I get it. It's hard because you want to be a nice guy. You don't want to slam the door in their face, but you have to be able to do these things because you don't know who that person really is. So the suggestion in that scenario, because I get asked every time, is offer to carry the boxes for them instead of opening the door, and let them swipe the badge. And if they can't swipe in or call someone to get in, then it's not real. Overcoming challenges in cybersecurity. So we face challenges. One of those challenges is often people. They don't like the inconvenience of having to put in a request to access this application they just downloaded, and they want to install it in a computer now, and they can't because they have to request access. That could be challenging. The cost may be an impact to your business, but I can promise you cost is not that big of a hurdle to overcome for zero trust. But so resistance to change is common. Users might find strict security measures like frequent reauthentication or restricted access inconvenient, impacting their work routines. This, yeah, some of them get upset, but as long as you have stake holders buy-in, you should be fine. Misunderstanding zero trust principles. There's often a misconception that zero trust is just about technology. In reality, it's a holistic approach involving processes, people, and technology. Is a zero trust framework. It is a framework, and it is something that businesses should be utilizing to protect their, most importantly, their client data, but also their business. Understanding internal threats. Businesses sometimes focus too heavily on external threats. In reality, you may have some internal threats. Underestimating the risk of internal threats. And again, it's a growing percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do know that number has grown every year over the last few years. In part because the ransomware gangs are saying, hey, we'll give you, $50,000 if you give us access to this computer, and nobody will ever know. So you don't have to worry about losing your job or whatever. But that's not true. So don't believe that. They will know. People will find out. And finally, businesses sometimes focus too heavily on external threats. Understanding the risk of internal threats, whether malicious or accidental, balancing security needs with business operations, and then finally, phased implementations. So making sure that we're not dumping all this on a business all at once. It's going to be overwhelming, and nothing is going to get done in the business. So start with the low-hanging fruit and then work your way up. So the low-hanging fruit would probably be multi-factor authentication on your email. And also, you could seek external support and expertise. And if you're not sure who to go to, there's my website right there at the bottom of the screen. Got a couple of case studies, and then we'll wrap up. We're running a little bit later than normal, but that's okay. So first, a small financial firm. This is a financial firm that hired us earlier this year to take over from another IT provider. This is sort of local. They're not in Connecticut, but they're not too far. And so we took over for another IT provider in California. Ironically, it was based on cost because that provider tripled their fees in 1 year. And so that's a lot. I don't know why any business would do that, except to say they're weeding out certain types of businesses. But the firm, we went in, we took over. Some of the same tools were in place. So we used the same remote monitoring tool, except for Apple. We don't use that tool for Apple computers. And we use, I think that might have been the only thing that they used that we used. And we installed our security stack. Well, within a few hours of us setting up the security stack on this client, we were alerted of a remote access Trojan. So it was a piece of remote software that was installed on one of the computers in the building that was accessible remotely, but the installation path was wrong for this remote access tool, and the file was wrong for this remote access tool. So somebody had used this tool, installed it so that it couldn't be found under normal circumstances, and this gave them access to the network whenever they wanted. I don't know how long it was there. All I know is we found it within a few hours. The computer was isolated immediately, and we mitigated the risk. But this is, they could have been minutes away from a ransomware attack for all I know. I don't know. But we took it out, and no harm was done. So they adopted the zero trust approach. And to be honest with you, I don't get, I get 1 or 2 requests a week at most for something that was blocked by zero trust. So they're not really, it's not impeding their ability to work. And it's usually something silly, like one time was a weird browser on, I don't even remember the name of it. I had to do some research on it to make sure it was legitimate. This week, I've only gotten one so far. It was for a Google Chrome plugin that I haven't even approved. because sometimes they just click on approve because they're getting annoyed by the pop-ups. So there's probably some Google Chrome plugin that is being blocked by Zero Trust, and they constantly get notifications, so they put in a request to have it approved. But now their clients trust them more, their business is more secure, and they didn't have any fallout from a ransomware attack or a data breach. And then case 2, a healthcare clinic. Small healthcare clinic needed to secure patient data and ensure compliance with health information and privacy regulations. We all know that it's HIPAA, but HIPAA is basically the ground floor of data security. It's the bare minimum. If you're not doing that, then you really have a problem. And yes, there's a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of things you have to do, a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot, but it has to get done. But it is also the bare minimum. And if you're not doing that, you're not taking care of your client's data. So we introduced a zero trust architecture with strong emphasis on encrypting patient data, both at rest and in transit. Yes, we do have a way to do that, but everybody does, at least at rest. So what does that mean? If you have Windows computers, you turn on BitLocker. It's not that hard to do. And then when you're sending emails with data, you encrypt that data. As long as you're not using a free email account, your email provider should be able to have a way to encrypt the information being sent back and forth. And most healthcare providers, including this one, have patient care portals. I'm drawing a blank on what they're called now. Electronic EDRs, electronic or EMRs, electronic medical records, EMRs. And those send data encrypted. So if you have, assuming you're using one, and you should be, your records are encrypted in there as well. Implemented strict access controls based on employee roles. I haven't seen any this year, but in previous years, almost every year, at least a few times a year, there's an employee that had access to healthcare records they shouldn't have had access to, and they steal them. I'm not sure why that keeps happening. So making sure you have the right controls for who should have access to what. And regular audits and employee training programs were put into place to reinforce the security culture. So HIPAA requires an audit. You have to have security risk assessment done, again, at least annually, but also if there's any changes made, you need to do it then. And for other reasons, you may need to continue. It is a continuous process to do these audits. It's not one and done. And then the trainings just reinforce a security culture within the organization. So they get 3 out of 4 Thursdays a month, they'll get a security training, micro training. They get the annual training. And it has helped because I get emails all the time saying, hey, this looks like phishing, can you verify? Instead of them just clicking or downloading or whatever. The outcomes: achieve compliance with healthcare regulations, again, being mostly HIPAA, avoiding potential fines, enhance protection of sensitive patient data from internal and external threats. Again, the healthcare world, for whatever reason, internal threats seem to be a bigger problem there than anywhere else. But they're not. It's not exclusive to healthcare. I've seen it in other industries as well. Improve staff awareness and adherence to cybersecurity best practices, and lessons learned. Regular audits are crucial in maintaining compliance and identifying areas of improvement. And a culture of security awareness among staff is as important as the technology implemented. So the weakest link in any cybersecurity plan is the human link. The weakest technology is the human brain, because we have emotion. Artificial intelligence does not have emotion. We do. And that's where the weak link comes in. You get that email that says, you ordered, thanks for your order of the $7,000 worth of computers on Amazon. Your heart drops a little bit because you're like, I didn't order $7,000 worth of computers. And you start panicking, and maybe you start clicking on links and logging into Amazon from the link that was sent to you, and now your Amazon account has been hacked. That's because of emotion. I did not see any questions in the chat. I'll give everybody a minute to think of any questions they have while they're doing that. This is how you contact us: NawageTech.com, 888.91.cyber. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, all at Nuage Tech. So feel free. We're on Twitter too, but or X, whatever it's called now, but I no longer really use it. So be pointless to follow us on there. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And you will find all of these Tech Talk Tuesdays on YouTube channel at Nuage Tech under the Tech Talk Tuesday playlist. And I still don't see any questions. So with that said, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email, support@nuage.tech. Happy to answer any questions, or just leave us a comment once this is uploaded. So until next week, again, next week, we're going to be talking about the holiday shopping and fishing extravaganza. Until next time, stay secure.